Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when you turn the world upside down, you've got to work with people that you trust. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I will assume that you do, because you're listening. So please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, God knows we would appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Letterboxd, the Instagram, the TikTok, the Threads, Blue Sky. There's too much. But we're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please come by and pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the movie image at large, because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. All of them matter. They really, really do. On this episode, we got a fun one. We are still in the throes of Emmy consideration, TV up to the wazoo, but we're having fun with it, looking behind the scenes at all the artists and artisans that make our favorite shows come to life. On this episode, we're diving into the world of Pluribus. You know, when Vince Gilligan is turning the world upside down, he needs people by his side who he's worked with before, and trusts. And that kind of person is Marshall Adams, who serves as one of the cinematographers on the show, and he's got experience in obviously various things. He worked on the El Camino movie. He's worked on a few things. He's that Better Call Saul. He's that kind of guy. But we talked about a lot of stuff and just sort of building this world of Pluribus and sort of the multi-facetedness of it all, and just sort of the importance of starting in on a show like this when you already have a second hand with a guy like Vince Gilligan, and how that really helps the work, which I can imagine, it's hard to explain, and he tries, but, at the end of the day, like, having that creative rapport with another person when you're doing something huge, a show like Pluribus, I think is really why these things succeed, and it's absolutely vital. But if you don't already know what this show is, it's on Apple Plus. So go sign up, check it out, and enjoy the hell out of it. But first, enjoy our talk with the cinematographer, Marshall Adams, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one. And we'll see you soon. Well, I mean, Marshall, obviously, man, first off, just thank you so much for the time, especially on the weekend, to talk about Pluribus and your work there, man. I love the show.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on. It was an amazing experience, I got to say. I mean, we had a ball. It was, uh, as you can imagine, Vince, all the time with a bigger budget, and yeah, it was very
That,
cool.
no, I mean, that leads into my first question, though, because, I mean, obviously, you have experience working with Vince before, but just given the nature of the show, it almost feels like Vince would have to bring in cinematographers first, because I mean, on this, like, you're kind of splitting the load with one other person before you even bring in directors to really sort of understand sort of the visual feel and aesthetic of the show.
Yeah, I mean, he had a very specific kind of idea visually, and Paul and I, really tried to bring that and to help him find that. He's such a visual guy as it is already. He really has he and Peter was the same way on Saul. They both have backgrounds in cinematography and looking at cinematography and appreciating it and understanding how light works. So it's not like dealing with somebody who doesn't necessarily kind of get that. And I can't tell you how many times Vince has asked me to make a scene a little darker or a little edgier or yeah.
Well, and I mean that leads into my next question because I mean, obviously, it's one of those things that sort of the layman don't understand how much sort of the manipulation of light comes into play in your job. Because, I mean, obviously, sometimes people think, oh, well, there's no light, it's underlit, it must have been easy to shoot. It's like, no, no, that makes it harder for them to shoot it.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
talk a
true.
little bit about just sort of, I guess, the interplay of light and dark, especially on a show like this that has a lot of shades going on, a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. I mean, just take the street lights in the cul-de-sac, for
Yeah.
example. We had a lot of conversations about those street lights and exactly where they were going to be placed, and obviously because we had full control over it. We had been there a year before we started shooting and picked that location. It was out in the middle of nowhere. We're standing in a field full of brush, and they plowed it and started building. So right from the beginning, we could talk about the way light was going to play there at night and the placement of all of those lights, and making sure that we didn't have to dolly through, or that they were, that the poles were getting in the way, et cetera, et cetera. So lots and lots of conversations. And the look of the show, I think Paul and I both kind of took a very kind of natural approach, a lot like we did on Saul.
Mm.
Um, uh, we had a lot more control of the interior of the house, because we were involved in it from the beginning. Where the lights were going and how they were going to play, and what was in them, what type of light was in them, so that we could adapt and use them, as we needed to. But yeah, it's interesting. It's always, for both of us, I think it's always about the story, and making sure that we can kind of deliver an interesting image, that is dark and edgy, or leans into whatever the mode is or the mood is of the scene, and yet isn't too dark that you can't necessarily see what the story point is, what we're talking about, or what the emotion is.
No, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned just sort of a year in advance. Like, I mean, obviously, that doesn't feel like it's a standard thing, being able to get onto a project sort of that in advance. Because, I mean, I can imagine in your job, sometimes you'll have some runway leading up to it, and sometimes it'll be like, shut up and shoot, Like,
That's true.
how does that kind of balance out?
Well, I mean, again, it was a different project in a lot of ways. I had a long-standing relationship with Vince and the producers, so they knew, if I was in Albuquerque, I was more than willing to come and check things out. Um, uh, we had the writer's strike kind of right in the middle of that
Right.
year, so they actually continued building, but that was basically all that got done during that entire strike. But we had lots of meetings and discussions about it, about where it was going to go. The view from that place was what it was kind of all about, the Sandias during the daytime, and being able to see Albuquerque in the distance at night and play it, as realistically as we could. We looked at a lot of places, and that one made the most sense. It's a little windy up there, up on the West Mesa, so that's a bit tricky sometimes. But yeah, it's a beautiful location, and there really wasn't anything around there, so they knew that it wasn't going to be a problem. We were doing things like flying the helicopter in, dropping that backhoe in, crazy stuff that you wouldn't want to do necessarily in somebody's real backyard, right?
It feels like a lot of your job comes down to problem solving. And I mean, I'm doing my research before we talk today. I've got to imagine that being a gaffer on Slumber Party Massacre 3 or Critters 3, where the budgets were probably a bit smaller than they were here, sort of gave you sort of the tools and the muscles to know how to sort of think on the fly.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my background kind of lends itself to it in a lot of ways, in a perfect way, in that I was a camera assistant for a number of years. Literally was about to run down and join the union after 4 or 5 years, and decided right before I did that I was probably a really bad camera assistant. I mean, I know I was, and because mostly I was more interested in watching what the electricians were doing, what the gaffer was doing. And so then I jumped into the electrical department, and started gaffing, like you said. Great research, by the way. Um, so I knew enough. I mean, knew a lot about camera, to begin with, and then the exposure to lighting, which I think is in a lot of ways, the largest part of the problem solving that I do. I mean, there's lots of other things, but figuring out how to light things in a way that is interesting and will lend itself to the next shot and the next shot is definitely a large part of the creative aspect of what I do.
Does also having sort of that real world sort of on-set experience sort of inform what you do now? Because I mean, I can imagine that, say, coming straight out of film school would be different and jumping into a sort of your role as cinematographer than someone like you who has been an electrician, understands lighting. It really does feel like the people who succeed in this business, especially behind the scenes, are the ones who have more of a knowledge of sort of the workings of everything.
Yeah, that's very true. And I have to say, I've actually talked about this a little bit before, that I'm a firm believer that starting on small projects, because you kind of have to do everything. You have to be a
Right.
grip and an electrician and jump in and carry cases for the camera department if you need to, or even with props or whatever. You can always kind of scale that up, but it's very hard to come from a place where it's already scaled up and then try to scale it down and be successful at it. So I think that informative time is irreplaceable for people that have come up on sets and learned from the bottom up.
Now I'm curious because obviously on the show, you got to be in it from the very beginning, so you're very involved. But I can imagine, like, if you get hired on the run of a show for a one-off, it's a different experience. Like, how does your job change when it's sort of having that sort of boots on the ground investment from day one versus sort of we need to come in to do this?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of experiencing that for the first time in a long time right now. I'm in Nashville working on a show that I was kind of the last hire. The crew was already in prep for the first two episode block, and I had literally no prep time, didn't know anything about locations or any of that, and working with people that already that I had no relationship with, and developing relationships and figuring it out. You just kind of figure it out. You figure out who's capable of kind of reading your mind and learning the way that you like to work, and you take advantage of those relationships as best you can. You build on them, and I have rules that I live by about the respect on set of people, and that great ideas can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
So I've always got my ear to so I'm always listening to what people have to talk about or suggestions that they make, and I want to make sure that they know that the door is always open for that stuff. Because we are much better as a group than we ever can be individually, as far as I'm concerned. So, and great ideas can come from anywhere.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right, man. I mean, it takes a village to do this stuff, be it the smaller sort of indie, sort of more budget shoes to something big like Pluribus, man. Every voice counts at the end of the day. I think that's a great way to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually, I got a Instagram message from a guy from Saudi Arabia a few years ago, and he said, hey, we really want to up our game on this television show that we're shooting. We'd love to bring you in as kind of a hired gun, and see if you can change the look of the show and make it more, like Saul. And I was like, I can't do anything like that for you. It's not me. It's a team of people that I rely on, and I mean, I might be able to help you a little bit, but what you're looking for is not something that I can bring by myself. It's just
For
not
sure,
possible.
for sure. No, I mean, I gotta ask, man, what got your foot into the door into this business? I mean, because I mean, at least from like again doing my research, like having sort of that guerrilla, 80s indie horror movie sort of experience early on, I've got to imagine you probably came at all of this from a place of love, being able to want to be involved in the business in any way that you could.
So my father is an architect,
Okay.
and had designed a number of houses in the town that I grew up in, which was Topanga, California. And David Chase bought one of those houses
Oh
and
wow.
wanted to remodel it. And they became fast friends. And David was around the house, hanging out with my dad a lot. And he found out that I was making little 8 millimeters, skateboard movies. And my dad had this little flatbed editor that I was, cutting them together on. And he said, you know what you got to do? I just took this new show. I'm a staff writer on this new show. the Rockford Files. You got to come down and hang out and visit. So I spent, a number of days down there on the set at Universal hanging out. The script supervisor let me time the takes for her and everything. And I got the bug. I mean, that definitely planted the seed that was where I wanted to be. Little did I know how many hours they actually worked, because I went home after a few. But so that really kind of planted the seed. I went to film school, ended up dropping out. I was running out of money, and I had a good friend that was already working in the industry, and he was a firm believer. He just said, "Come work. You'll learn a lot more than you can at film school. It's worth all the time invested." So that's kind of how it shook down. And luckily I grew up in LA. There were films being made, sets around. I mean, I remember going to see Cheech and Chong. We were in high school and hung out on their set. They were working on Nice Dreams down the street, and we could watch and kind of check out what was going on. And yeah, it was all fun and glamour as far as I could tell.
I love it. I love it. I mean, just put a bow on this. I'm curious because I'm always curious on where sort of the creative payoff comes for people. And I mean, I got a feeling that from your perspective in your job, it is that sort of art of the collaboration. And even having someone like Vince go, no, man, Marshall's my guy. I want to work with Marshall. Like for you, from your perspective, where do those payoffs come? Because again, it's not necessarily the obvious thing like writing a great line or crafting a great shot as a director or being an actor. There's still sort of that need for a creative payoff with what you do. Like, I'm curious what that is.
It's very satisfying to me. I mean, I love what I do when we come up with something fun and it works. I mean, just even the scene 46, the one that we did on Pluribus with the car and the mount and the LED screens and the whole
Oh my
deal.
God, yeah.
But that was a very scary moment. I wasn't sure how well it was going to work, and the fact that it paid off. I mean, that's probably it, is taking some big risks and having them pay off. That's where the satisfaction is, when you look at it and you say, now that was worth it. That was worth all of the times that I drove down here in my car and like held my phone up and recorded as I was driving, and then played backwards to figure out exactly what the interactive street light was going to be, or came over here and looked at where we were talking about placing things. Or I have a thing where I build stuff in 3D so that I can see it, place a camera in it, and kind of see what the angles and what the lighting surfaces will be. So I'm a son of an architect, so it's a lot of that influence too, I think.
Well, no, and I believe that. And I mean, I've got to imagine having a showrunner like Vince who's willing to sort of encourage that and say, hey, let's try it, is how, you as a team and how everyone as a team gets to make fantastic and exciting stuff like Pluribus. But I mean, Marshall, again, man, thanks for the time and just congrats again on the work, man. I appreciate the insight.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, my pleasure, David. It was really, really nice to talk to you, and it's been a heck of a ride. I can only say. I mean, the
I
success of the
love it, man.
show
I
is
love it. Keep enjoying the
phenomenal.
ride, brother. We'll talk to you
Yeah,
soon.
cool.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Dave.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.